Associated Press report indicates that a number of people who have been detained by ICE are now being force-fed following their decision to engage in a hunger strike. Now, they're participating in a hunger strike for obvious reasons. They're angry about the way that they've been treated, and they're also angry about the fact that it seems like they're gonna be, imprisoned indefinitely, and they want answers. And so this investigation by the Associated Press found that a lot of these detainees are being force-fed, especially if they've gone a long period of time without eating or drinking anything. At the El Paso Processing Center, detainees have been refusing food for more than 30 days. Nearly 30 detainees, mostly from India and Cuba, have been protesting what they say is rampant verbal abuse and threats of deportation from guards.
They're also deeply concerned about being in jail for so long. Look, they're like, we went through the proceedings. The Cubans are talking about, they already passed a lot of the tests, like the credible fear interview that you're supposed to do. Besides which, the Cubans have different rules that apply to them. They're a special case. So usually if they just make it here, they're like, okay, welcome, okay, we're done with it. You guys have rules that apply to no one else. But in this case, Trump's like, what's their name? Oh, this guy's name is, Rodriguez Calderon. It's like, nah, yeah, keep him in detention. So look, that part, I don't know why technically they're keeping him in detention. I'm not saying that Trump actually literally ordered in that particular case, but it is unusual. And these are not folks that are part of any caravan or anything. It's Cuba, India, right? And so it makes sense. This is why they do hunger strikes, because when there's no end in sight to their suffering and they want to draw attention. And did you know there was Cubans and Indians who had passed a number of tests already that were still being detained and that were being mistreated by ICE? Well, I didn't know until they started doing the hunger strike. That's the whole point.
So ICE officials have force-fed 6 immigrants through plastic nasal tubes. And if you read the details about how that procedure is done, it's pretty, it's gruesome. Like they lubricate the tube, they shove it through their nose, and it's painful, and it's not consensual. This is based on a judge agreeing that they can be force-fed, but the actual people have not consented to this. Medical professionals question the ethics behind this. Many of them are against this practice, and so doesn't matter for ICE, and apparently to a federal judge who approved this.
So I just want to give one or a couple of details about how what happens afterwards. After you do the force feeding, the detainees then wind up having persistent nosebleeds, understandable, and also vomiting several times throughout the day. So you have to keep on feeding them because the procedure causes vomiting, leading to you having to force feed them even more. And so it's this vicious cycle that happens. And this is arguably the worst part. They then want to further punish them, so they put them in solitary confinement. Why does a person on a hunger strike, who is very weak and frail usually, have to be put in solitary confinement when they're a danger to others by not eating?
Because it's all punitive. And these are people who are seeking, asylum. These are asylum seekers. And I mean, when you really think about it, in most cases, right, they're people who are fleeing their own countries for whatever terrifying reason, and they're looking for safety for themselves, for their family members. And instead, they come to this country and they get the exact opposite of what they're expecting, which is a place of refuge, right? They get a place where they're further tortured violently. Everything is very punitive. You're right. Why are they put in solitary confinement? It's all punitive. That's the whole point of all of this.
Yeah, and so apparently, if you go on a hunger strike for 4 weeks, probably an issue that I will never confront. So look, these folks are incredibly brave. I can't imagine being on a hunger strike, let alone for 30 days. But it not only deteriorates your body, but at some point it starts to have effects on your mind as well. And that is compounded when you're put into solitary confinement. So they're almost trying to make the consequences of this even worse and more drastic. So when the idea of abolish ICE first came out, and it wasn't just Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but she was definitely a huge leader in that. I have to confess that I was slightly skeptical because someone has to do a similar task as ICE. And by the way, in the abolish ICE movement, if you don't know, it's not like people say, it's not the Republican mythology, where all of a sudden we go, oh, well then open the borders, everybody, come on in, right? So and there's no customs or any, of course there's customs, and someone else takes on some of the tasks that ICE is doing without the Gestapo tactics, right? But I'm now a little less skeptical because every time you read about ICE, they are doing something brutal. So it makes you wonder, this agency, which is fairly new, established less than 2 decades ago, has a history of brutality. And here we are again, another case. Actually, it's throughout the country, 4 different detention centers, more brutality and irresponsibility, not being accountable to anyone. So if we have a different organization that has a different mandate, we might be in way better shape than we are under this, because they're representing us to the rest of the world.
Yes.
And that's an ugly face to put on America.
So in its reporting, the Associated Press specifically referenced the treatment of detainees in Guantanamo Bay and how many of them protested the way that they were being treated through hunger strikes, and they were also force-fed. And I bring that up because in that case, I mean, I think that there was a pretty significant portion of the country who understood that that was wrongdoing by the US. And in this case, we're dealing with asylum seekers. We're not even dealing with suspected terrorists, right? And I feel like this is just another story that's gonna get brushed under the rug and everyone moves on with their lives.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's no Trump tweet about it, so it's going to get less attention. But great credit to Associated Press, who found the story, broke the story, and shined a light on it. One more thing, the World Medical Association says that doctors should not participate in force feeding. So part of the point of a hunger strike is to get to a resolution. So either you're going to let the person die or you're going to address their concerns in some way. That is why it's an extreme action, and it involves extreme pain for the person doing the hunger strike and extreme risk. That is what motivates the government to respond to it. But if you do the force feeding, it becomes a form of torture and then never gets to a resolution, and then it goes on indefinitely, which is prolonged torture. That is why the World Medical Association says that doctors should not participate in force feeding. And unfortunately here, the ethics of the doctors are being compromised as they participate in this, honestly, monstrosity. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.